Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our publishing and coaching services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Joe Friend, author of the Robot War series. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Are you ready to get started?
I am ready, sir.
All right. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, they say brevity is the soul of wit, so I would encourage every writer to polish your craft and understand that your work is about characters and conflict, not necessarily about your ability to craft, florid descriptions. I've read a few books lately where the contrast between the two is pretty glaring. In some hands, I see a lot of new authors tend to be overly descriptive, and that tends to pull the reader out of the content, and it messes with the pacing of your story, versus seasoned pros, who are, they just know how to keep the plot progressing. They keep pushing at the backs of their characters, and they don't spend 4 paragraphs on what the diner looks like, for example.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Okay. For me, the hardest part right now is finding a publisher to get your work in front of. I think we live in a world where, I think it's excellent for starters that there's so much intellectual property available, and the cost of entry to generating content is so low that there's literally, there's so much material out there that publishers have to ensconce themselves in these ivory towers, so to speak, and they only ever support authors who are already tried and true. So I think as a new writer, breaking that barrier is going to be tough. Everyone seems to want, sequels and series and retread characters. You look at the books of, I'm not going to name any authors here, but you look at the authors who have then ceded their writing responsibility for characters they've already established to ghostwriters. And so therefore you just have the same old characters coming back again and again and again. And if people are buying it, great. There's nothing wrong with that model, but it makes it hard for a new writer to break in. You look at the author of 50 Shades of Grey. Sorry, her name's slipping my mind right now. But she had something that blew up into great intellectual property, great IP, even successful movie series, etc. But she never would have been published if she didn't self-publish, for starters, and start generating buzz around her material. I mean, that's just one way in, and it's it's not easy out there. And I think your next question gets into that as well, so I'll hold back a little.
Yeah, it transitions perfectly, and that is to please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that worked well.
Okay. But here's the part where I tell you that I don't have any successful marketing strategy so far. And it might be because I know, I work in digital advertising technologies, but I deal a lot with marketing and advertising and agencies and creatives, et cetera. So I have a fair share, while it's not my primary field, I have a fair share of knowledge about how marketing works. And I know enough about marketing to know that it's a specialized and highly refined field that you're not going to be great at it right away. You're not going to wake up and be like, hey, in addition to an awesome author and whatever else you need to be, good on social media, great at blogging, awesome at Snapchatting or Instagramming or whatever, I'm now also going to be a great marketer all of a sudden, even though this isn't what I went to college for. So typically I would prefer to leave the professional work to the professionals. This also includes representing yourself in court, by the way. Don't do it. But if you're a author who's early in their career, you don't necessarily have that budget to get at the marketing that you need. And without you developing the subject matter expertise yourself, then you're just going to go out and just make mistakes. And I feel that I've done trial by error as pertains to my marketing. I've tried some purchasing campaigns directly from Kindle, doing stuff on social media. I've been trying to find a digital-only audience for my stuff because I don't want to have to go through without having a specific print publisher, go through the process of setting up print distribution. So for me, it's just been leveraging my skill set that I've already had into this new field that I'm looking to break into, and it's been an uphill battle.
Yeah, marketing is a challenge, and it's one of those things where it's not easy. I think that's the one thing, besides going through editing and the proofreading process, is the other hardest part about getting published is being able to figure out that plan. Because I was in the same boat 3 years ago when I started my first book. I had no idea how to market, so I just dug in and learned everything I can, and fortunately it worked out where I was able to develop the system and then perfect it over all 13 of my books, and was able to plug and play that into all my clients to help them become successful. But you're absolutely right. You have to be able to develop a system, and it's not easy. I mean, it's not exactly reinventing the wheel, but it's not an easy process because there are so many different things out there with social media or blogs and using different book promo companies. It's just really coming up with the right strategy. And that's why we always emphasize that question so much, because some of our guests have great answers, and some of them, they're not able to answer it because it really is, I would say, probably the most challenging part outside of editing and proofreading.
Yeah, and I think, yes, it's challenging. It's a highly specialized skill set. But in addition to that, I don't even think the author themselves can appropriately answer what they would consider to be a success of their marketing. If they see dollar signs or they see audience share as being the end result of their marketing campaigns, that's not step one for any author early in their career. That's a few steps down the road. They need to understand what part of the funnel they sit in and the strength of their IP, and in addition to the works that they have in the hopper that come behind this stuff. So it is a battle. There's a lot of players in the space. And there's a lot of spaces to be in, so it's not easy.
Well, Joe, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Okay, yeah. You'll never get me to answer this question, but my favorite books are typically tied to authors. But everything about each of the favorites that I have involve, simply put, prose. When I first moved to Los Angeles, in order to learn about the new city that I lived in, I just decided to scoop up some old Raymond Chandler books. He writes the detective series using Philip Marlowe as his character, this hard-boiled detective from like the 30s. I chewed through all 6 of those books. He quickly became one of my favorite authors simply for, snappy dialogue, and also I had to keep going back and checking. I go, whoa, this book was written in 1934, and a lot of it still resonates today. Along the lines of prose would be anything Hemingway, of course, anything Hunter S. Thompson, Thomas Pynchon for Inherent Vice is one of my favorites. And then for contemporary, I really love Ken Nunn. I think he wrote the book Chance that got turned into a series, I think, on Amazon recently. But he wrote this misto surfing book called The Dogs of Winter, which is good prose coming into the winter itself. But favorites for me have a lot to do with time of year and where I'm at. The right book can set the right mood depending on what kind of mood you're in and what location you're in and what time of year it is.
Well, and typically I'll ask this question too, is what was the number one thing you learned from it? I know you mentioned a lot of books, but was any recurring theme that you noticed with a lot of the books that you've read?
So from taking an author's point of view on the books that I've read, well, are we talking craft, or are we talking just life lessons here?
I would say life lessons. I think that's the best way to communicate this.
I think life lessons that I pick up from my books, or when I read books that I try to glean life lessons from, or simply be present, and also don't apply your opinion of how somebody's response is going to be to their actual response. In other words, give somebody the benefit of the doubt and make an extra effort to be kind, or at least exercise critical thinking prior to responding to something.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, so my favorite quote, and this has got a lot to do with my work life as well, is attributed to H.H. Williams, and it's called, it goes, "Furious activity is no substitute for understanding." And it just means to me that, despite your urgency around something, or how much panic you have toward any particular problem or item that you're working on, it doesn't help. It doesn't, until you fully understand an issue, you can't really do anything about it. So no matter what your approach is, it should be at first to seek to understand what it is you're about to engage in before you furiously go and engage in it. The other interesting thing about that quote is you can't really find much about H.H. Williams, like who was this person? Is this correctly attributed? When I look back, the best I can find is some ecclesiastical bishop from back in the day, and I don't think it's that guy. So I'm still having trouble tracking down that this is the correct attribution for this quote.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
You can go to my website. It's www.jf3co.com, like jf3co.com, and you should be able to connect to me everywhere else: Instagram, Facebook, Amazon. I actually make music on the side, so I'm on iTunes and Google Play and Napster and Spotify and all that stuff as well. So lots of places. Go play.
Well, Joe, thanks again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
All right, thank you, Paul. I appreciate you reaching out and talking through this.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.